So if you've been telling yourself, I just need more willpower, then I've got some bad news for you, because what you're fighting here is not willpower, it's wiring. And if you're trying to power through, you're eventually going to lose that fight. It's not because you're lazy or broken or a bad person, weak, any of these things. It is because you have trained your brain to seek pleasure from an external source. And your brain is now trained to drink under pressure. So for those of you that are new here, I'm Dan Hunter. I set up Clear Mind, Clear Life to help people like you, like me, that have a problem with their drinking. Now, what do I mean by problem with their drinking? So if you're an alcoholic and you're drinking a bottle of vodka every morning, I can't help you because I'm not a doctor. You need medical help. Now, if you're one of the kind of, these sort of middle or grey area people that are on that path, you're drinking too much, it's affecting your life, it's affecting your family, your wife, your husband, your job, your business, all of these things. You know what the problem is more than I do at the moment because we're not working together yet. But if you're in this grey area, that's where I can help you. So this entire program is for people like you. Like I ran a successful business for years. Externally, everything was fine. But under the surface, I was just in turmoil. I had terrible anxiety, depression. My business was suffering. I was at 20% capacity. And you're probably in this state at the moment. That's why you found this video, is because I don't know what you're doing. You're tapping away on Google or YouTube, and you're trying to find out as much as you can about your drinking. And you know that you're probably drinking too much. So that's how we've kind of come to each other here. So in the last 10 years, this is what I've been doing. I've developed this program that is like 6 months long, and you will be able to quit drinking far easier than you thought possible. So think about what you've been doing for the last 10 years. This is what I've been doing, okay? So I've been distilling all of this down. I've been working with people. I used myself as the initial blueprint, and all of the problems that took me years to kind of fully understand, I will shrink that entire journey down for you to, it's a 6-month program, but probably 3 months, where we start rewiring your brain, because you didn't start drinking overnight. You're not drinking the amount that you drink now overnight. It took a while to get there. So we're going to need to unpick a lot of things. But this is what we can do. It's easy. It's not easy, but it's simple, but it'll be easier than you think, especially with my help. So anyway, on with the video. So what is the real problem here? Okay. So most people think that they have a drinking problem, and that's kind of wrong. Okay. What you have is a reward loop problem. So I'm going to say that again. You don't have a drinking problem per se, you have a reward loop problem. So here's how it happens, okay? You feel tension, you feel stress, you feel anxiety. You will then reach for a drink and you get instant relief because, not very popular to say, but drinking works, doesn't it? That's why you do it. What happens is you get this relief and the brain logs that. You get some dopamine, and it's like, oh, we should do that again, because your brain, especially that dopamine reward system, you'd get a dopamine release for doing something that was productive, like when we were cave people. It's a really sort of primitive part, or not primitive, but it's a very ancient part of our brain that is there to reward you for doing something. It's things like, sex, making something, food, these kinds of things. It's a reward system. So what alcohol does is it hijacks that and it turns it up to 11. So your brain says, oh, we've got dopamine, we'll do more of that. And this is the whole reason why things like moderation fail. You just think, I'll just have one drink. It's not about the drink, it's the brain that is kind of hijacked. And what it wants is, it's like the little mouse in a maze that's kind of pressing the button of like, I want more, I want more. That's what your brain is doing. So having 1 or 2 drinks just doesn't work. You want to, your brain is used to just being amped up on this dopamine. It wants to do more and more and more of it. This is why some people, they go to the gym 10 times a week or something like that, because they're getting a similar kind of hit from it. This is how people end up 600 pounds in weight, because they're getting something out of, a dopamine release from the food and stuff. This is the reward loop problem. It's not a drinking problem per se. Drinking is a kind of symptom, or is the start of the problem. And this is what we do in the program. This is how we rewire you a bit. This is how we get you back to a baseline. We unpick all of these kind of shitty habits that you've got, and we get you much more aligned to a place where you're able to kind of manage yourself. Believe it or not, you will get to a point where the idea of drinking seems mental. That's what that's what I can do for you. But there's a cost, really, of continuing to do what you're doing. Of course there is. There's got to be a cost of continuing along the path that you're on. You've come to this video because you've had enough and you want to get out of this cycle, this reward loop, as you now know what it is. But you need to understand that there is a very negative set of circumstances that are going to occur when you continue drinking. So if you keep running this reward loop, like the first thing that's going to happen is, which you already know, but your tolerance increases. So what started as 1 or 2 drinks just to loosen up and like, oh, I feel good now, is maybe now 10 drinks, 20 drinks. I don't know what it is. But in order to get that same level of satisfaction, that same kind of, that feeling is now way more. And when you're pouring way more alcohol into your system, guess what? You are fucking yourself up badly. You're really kind of screwing your liver, and the alcohol, the ethanol, is damaging every cell it's coming into contact with. And the more you pour that in, guess what? The worse it gets. Now, the second thing that happens is your kind of stress threshold drops. So what does this mean? Well, your irritability is going to increase. You're going to want the dopamine hit more and more and more. And you're also going to be much slower to recover, because obviously dopamine is a chemical in your brain. What you're doing is you're stressing that system. So it's releasing dopamine, but it's kind of, you've sort of bastardized the whole system. So you're causing it almost to kind of misfire, so that when you stop drinking, this is where withdrawal comes from. And you don't have to be a raging alcoholic to be having withdrawal. You just you can be a relatively moderate drinker and have withdrawal. Anxiety the next day, believe it or not, this is withdrawal. And what you're doing is you're stressing this entire system so that it kind of breaks almost, and that's why you're not recovering. But the good news is it can be fixed. So nothing's permanent here. The third thing is that your focus is going to fracture, basically. So this is when you start losing confidence. Maybe you're at this point already. This is where a lot of people come to me. So you're struggling with confidence. You can't really stay in deep work, and you're getting irritable with people. You're snapping at them, this kind of thing. So your inability to stay focused on anything for any great length of time. That's where the loss of kind of self comes from as well, because you used to be a disciplined person. You used to be able to work for hours at a time. Whereas now you feel in this kind of malaise and this kind of general uncomfortableness. And fourthly and finally, your anxiety grows, because what you're doing is you are screwing with a number of chemicals in your brain, as I say. So you are getting the dopamine, but it's also damaging things like GABA and serotonin again, which I'm not going to, maybe I'll make a separate video on all of these, but you can, if you're curious, you can look up GABA, serotonin, and it's all a very sort of delicate balance. It's like, pouring oil into a pristine pond. The fish are going to suffer. They're probably going to die. And that's kind of what you're doing. You're pouring this kind of bullshit into your system that is, washing your brain and causing different chemicals to misfire. I mean, is it any wonder that you feel like shit and you're struggling to kind of cope and you're struggling to live a normal life? So as you can see, this is about neurobiology. It's something that it's not a morality thing, or it's not you being a terrible person. It's pure neuroscience, because alcohol boosts the dopamine and it teaches your brain that drink good, drink equal good. It's not surprising that you keep reaching for it and you struggle with it. So when you drink to, say, switch off, what you're doing is you're teaching your brain that this is how it relaxes. So when you have these periods of inactivity, let's say, and you're bored or something like that, that's why the brain immediately goes sort of, oh, well, why don't we have a drink? Because that's how we relax. Give me the drink and I'll give you the dopamine, and we'll kind of repeat this cycle. So what you're doing is you're kind of, it's almost Pavlovian in a way. You're training yourself to rely on this as a way to relax. So this is the problem with willpower. Like, you think that you can just use willpower, and unfortunately it doesn't work, because willpower doesn't overcome biology. It's a bit like holding your breath and expecting to hold it forever. You know, at a certain point, the system is going to win and you're going to drink, you know? So you're not going to win that battle. So with all of that said, what can we do about it? Right. So I'm here to help you. I set up the program, and there are 3 distinct phases to the program. So what we want to do is, number 1, we want to map it. So this is map the problem. Things like situations, triggers, people, places, all of these kinds of things that kind of trigger you to drink. We want to map that out. Part 2 is you want to rebuild it. We want to rewire all of these associations, and we want to replace this kind of quick hit that you're getting with something more sustainable. And phase 3 is where we reinforce it. And this is things like locking in a structure, accountability, and real life stress testing. And what I mean by that is kind of putting you back in these situations that were triggers, but kind of metaphorically holding your hand a bit to kind of say, look, you know, almost like exposure therapy, where it's like, right, let's go into these situations that we were in before, but we're not going to drink, we're not going to use the alcohol as a coping mechanism. And slowly over time, we start unpicking this kind of nonsense that's in your brain, so that when, you know, in the future, life kind of punches you in the face as it's going to do, the first thing you do is you don't reach for a drink. And once you start fixing this kind of wiring, if you like, that's when everything improves. So you're going to wake up clear-headed, motivated, rather than kind of anxious and depressed. You're then able to handle stress without spiraling out. And you're going to start regaining that kind of quiet confidence that you had some years ago. So you're going to get that back. And perhaps maybe you've been faking it for a while. You're not going to need to fake it anymore. You'll get that natural confidence come back. Also, you're probably going to start, stop worrying that maybe people are knowing that you're drinking. Maybe they're noticing that you're drinking. Because one thing I will tell you now is everybody knows. You think they don't know, but they do. So people at work, you think, oh, they won't know. They do know, because you come in and you will smell of alcohol. You think you don't. You'll have a shower. You'll brush your teeth, you'll have gum, but you'll smell of alcohol. And your children know, your wife know, everybody knows, okay? And all of that is going to stop. So just imagine all of these things, and imagine yourself being in control of this again, and in control of this for a change, being at the cause end of things rather than the effect end of things. You're shaping reality rather than having reality shape you. Subtle change, but massive. And the problem with all of this is the longer you leave it, the worse it gets. It's like anything. It's like, if you feel a lump or something like that and you just think, oh, I'm going to bury my head in the sand and just hope it goes away. It's never a good strategy. It's never going to work for you. The longer this goes on, the worse it is going to get. Because we all know the expression, like neurons that fire together, wire together. The longer this goes on, you're carving out these pathways in your brain. The deeper they get, the harder they are to change. The good news is that, they can change. We know that neuroplasticity goes well into all of our lives. We have a great capacity for change, but the older we get, it becomes a little bit more difficult, especially when we're doing it on our own. If you've got someone to help you like me, then it becomes a lot easier. The longer you leave it, the harder it gets. So the old Chinese expression, which I say in a lot of these videos, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Okay, so don't sit on this. And I think another way to put this is the problem doesn't plateau, it compounds. It's like compound interest. It starts getting worse and worse and worse, and then it accelerates and it gets exponential almost. So there will be a tipping point where these kind of slow creep towards the feelings that you're having now, this kind of discomfort and the unhappiness with the drinking, this grows, and then all of a sudden it's like bang, and it just exponentially gets worse, and then you are in trouble. So what you want to do is get ahead of that, and that's probably why you're watching this video. You're probably watching a bunch of these on YouTube, and you're at that point where you're ready for change, but you just have to make the decision to stop. And if you want to have a chat with me, you can. There's the program. There's 2 ways we can do it. The first is a much more, personal and a bit more of a premium service where we work together for 6 months, I'll be frank with you, that's kind of thousands of dollars. If you've got the funds and you want a guaranteed kind of, I am going to quit drinking, and it's, you are guaranteed to stop, then that's going to be for you. If your pockets are not that deep and you want something that's a bit more kind of everyman solution, you can have the program and the course and all of that, which you'll work through yourself. And then we have a webinar on a Monday and a Friday where we can, you can talk to me, you can ask me questions, you can tell me how you're getting on with the program, struggles, successes, all of these kinds of things. And that's much more affordable. You can also pay it over a couple of months as well. So if you want to do that, there is that solution available to you. So there we go. And it all depends how serious you are. What do you want to do? Are you ready to quit, or are you just going to keep watching videos on YouTube? Because if you're ready to quit, click the link in the comments below. Anyway, whatever you do, I wish you well. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.